Good evening, I'm Claudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight live from Warsaw. President Zelenskyy announced the Ukraine-Europe plan proposals should be ready by Tuesday to be shared with the U.S. administration. While discussions on the future of Ukraine continue, there is no consensus on what will happen to the Donbas. Stay with us until the end as we ask our guest, Ukraine's Serhiy Prytula, if the country is ready to make concessions. More on the topic in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. EU member states agreed to exempt Poland from compulsory migrant relocations, no cost incurred. Far-right defeated in Bucharest as Cyprian Ciucu is elected mayor. And Brussels Christmas markets and festive lights are in full swing ahead of Christmas. Would Ukraine give up land to Russia? That was the underlying question of the meeting of allied leaders with Volodymyr Zelenskyy in London on Monday, as the Ukrainian president is counting on Europe's support in minimizing the fallout of accepting a peace deal that would leave Ukraine in a disadvantaged position. All that against a backdrop of Ukraine and the U.S. not seeing eye to eye on possible concessions involving the Donbas. More in Sonia Gatabishchan's report.
Will you give up any territory to Russia?
That was the central question as Volodymyr Zelenskyy was welcomed by the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London on Monday. The visit took place hours after Donald Trump voiced his regret over the Ukrainian president not having read his peace proposal.
We've been speaking to President Putin and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including President Zelenskyy. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelenskyy hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago.
But talking peace took central stage at 10 Downing Street, where Zelenskyy and Starmer were joined by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and French President Emmanuel Macron. And the message from Europe was clear.
We stand with Ukraine, and if there's to be a ceasefire, it needs to be a just and lasting ceasefire.
On the same occasion, Zelenskyy highlighted that it was the united front that was key in ending Russia's war.
Things which are very important for today, I think unity between Europe and Ukraine, and also unity between Europe, Ukraine and the United States.
The United States, which seems to leave its allies wondering if unity is what they have with Washington.
We are trying to continue our support for Ukraine, as you know. On the other hand, we are seeing these talks and negotiations in Moscow. I'm skeptical about some of the details which we are seeing in the documents coming from the U.S. side, but we have to talk about it.
The Monday meeting follows last week's talks between the American and Russian sides in Moscow and the U.S. team and Ukrainian officials in Florida. On Sunday, Zelenskyy noted that American envoys are aware of Ukraine's core positions. But speaking to Bloomberg on Monday morning, he highlighted that they do not seem to be on the same page.
There are visions of the US, Russia and Ukraine, and we don't have a unified view on the Donbas.
The tone of negotiations was further affected by Washington's recently published national security strategy, which introduced a critical take on Europe. Russia, which has been waging a war against Ukraine for nearly 4 years now, welcomed the strategy. Reflecting on the peace talks, Ukrainian soldiers on the front line have doubts as to whether the right balance is struck for now, and seem to resonate with the idea of Ukraine standing its ground.
The demands look as if we started the aggression, not Russia. I see every inch of Ukrainian land as important, and we do not plan to give it up just like that.
Zelenskyy continues his calls for a just and lasting peace on Monday evening in Brussels, where he is meeting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
And as leaders of the UK, Germany and France met with President Zelenskyy in London amid renewed efforts to settle the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainians back home have their own opinions about how the end of the war should play out. Our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Kataji, asked the residents if they were ready to make concessions to see the conflict come to a close.
As Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visits Downing Street for talks in London with European leaders about the contours of a potential peace deal between the United States, Ukraine and Russia, TVP World is in Kyiv to speak to Ukrainians about how they feel about a potential peace deal that may include Ukraine giving up territory to Russia.
I think it's good because I want a peace.
I don't believe in this forced plan.
about this peace plan, because like our country is being in the war for many years, and we fight for our freedom. So to give Russia our territories, I don't think that's a good idea.
Territory question of recognizing it of Donetsk region and Luhansk region and Crimea of part of Russia, it's the most problematic part of talks because we still have like 30 or 20, as far as I remember, percent of that territory where Ukrainians still live, where people want to be with Ukraine, and I think that there can be not even talks about this.
If we give them something, and USA and other countries now helping again after, maybe this is something like 2014 maybe.
Unfortunately, we understand, and my colleague, my friends understand that we need to give some territories to Russia, but we want to fair peace, yeah.
The memorandum between USA and Ukrainian and Russia, where Budapest memorandum, where you must protect Ukraine, must.
Ukrainians then saying that they very much want to sign a peace deal. However, there is a lot of skepticism that signing a deal with Russia will be one that's respected by the Russian government. Ukrainians have been here before in 2014 and with the Budapest Memorandum, and they do not feel that they have a partner for peace in Moscow. However, they definitely do want this war to end. The question is, on what terms? It's Oz Katherjee reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Poland is released from any relocation mechanism, free also from any cost related to it. In this respect, we seem to have achieved everything we wanted, said Poland's Interior Minister Marcin Kierwiński in Brussels on Monday, as EU member states have consented to Poland being exempt from compulsory immigrant relocations. Our correspondent Angela Skujins brings us more on the latest from the heart of Brussels in this next report.
On Monday, Europe's internal affairs ministers gave their political endorsement so that Poland can be exempt from a part of the EU's new migration and asylum rules expected to kick in June next year. Now, the pact calls for a sharing of the burden when it comes to these new arrivals. EU member states can do this through relocation, offering operational support or paying €20,000 per individual that they did not accept. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk for months has railed against this part of the proposal and celebrated the win on Monday with a post on social media platform X.
Just as I promised, Poland has been exempted from the obligation to accept migrants under the EU's relocation mechanism.
The European Commissioner for Migration, Magnus Brunner, last month identified Poland, as well as 5 other EU member states, as countries that could apply for a full or partial exemption from the solidarity mechanism as part of the new migration rules. The EU migration chief stated that Poland could apply as it faces significant migratory burden, referring to the weaponized migration coming from across the border of Belarus, as well as those displaced Ukrainians fleeing Russian aggression in the north. According to the most up-to-date data from September 2025, almost 1.1 million Ukrainians sought temporary protection in Poland. Data from 2024 highlights over 900,000 individuals lodged an asylum application in the EU, but only 20% of those who were rejected were returned to their country. Now, this is what has led to other EU measures being improved on Monday, such as the establishment of the legal mechanism allowing the setup of return hubs as well as processing centres outside of Europe. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
And as discussion on migration in the EU continues, Monday marks exactly 1 year since President Bashar al-Assad's rule of Syria came to an end, beginning a process of transformation of the country under Ahmed al-Sharaa. The winds of change triggered a mass return of displaced Syrians who fled their homes escaping the conflict. Natalia Komarov took a closer look at how Syria has changed and what is the fate of refugees who left the country in pursuit of a better life.
Syria is celebrating. Exactly 1 year ago, the HTS rebel army entered Damascus and President Bashar al-Assad fled to Moscow after 24 years in office. The rebel leader Ahmed al-Sharaa assumed power.
This victory is a new chapter in the history of the entire Islamic nation. This victory is a new chapter in the history of the region.
Al-Sharaa, who once fought for Al-Qaeda, was now ready to shake hands with Western leaders, including US President Donald Trump. But most importantly, he vowed to turn Syria into a flourishing democracy.
Now they have hope. Before they were just surviving. So the situation is still very, very bad. Don't get me wrong, it's catastrophic, but people have hope, and this is something amazing.
According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, over 3 million Syrians returned home over the last 12 months. Most of them internally displaced, with 1.2 million being refugees who came back to Syria from abroad.
We were scared in our country, scared of the army. Now we have an army that we care about. Now we are not afraid.
The Syrian civil war was a big factor fueling the European migrant crisis. Every day, boats carrying migrants crossed the Mediterranean Sea. EU member states received 1.2 million asylum applicants in 2015 and 1.1 million in 2016. Numbers this high have not repeated since and only got close after the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
It was something like 2.5 million people walking toward Germany and the Scandinavian countries, creating a humanitarian crisis on the way, and let's also face it, fueling the rise of anti-migration movement throughout Central and Eastern Europe, and actually the entire Europe.
Now some have returned, but many prefer to stay in Europe.
Now, after 10 or 12 years, it's difficult for some Syrians because they've already achieved a lot here. Not all of them, but many. They now have children who are going to school. So that's why the decision to go back to Syria isn't so easy.
But should al-Sharaa succeed in reforming the country, maybe more people will choose to raise their children in a free and democratic Syria. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
As Poland is one of the countries hit hardest by Russian hybrid attacks in Europe, the authorities continue to search for, arrest and prosecute suspects who take part in provocations and orchestrating attacks across different fields. On Monday alone, Poland detained and charged 3 Ukrainians found with hacking devices, and that is only the tip of the iceberg. Randy Potts breaks it all down in his next report.
Hackers, saboteurs, and spies. Suddenly 3 common dishes on the menu these days in Polish courts and police stations. Aside from all the mysterious drones and balloons appearing out of nowhere to shut down airports and even threaten Zelensky's plane, there are also humans driving around with piles of tech supplies, damaging rail lines, even transporting instructions from the Kremlin for, possibly, building a bomb. Just this morning, Poland detained and charged 3 Ukrainians after search of their car produced an array of sophisticated equipment common among hackers. Flippers, scammers, jammers, transmitters, and something the authorities described as a spying device detector. Then there are 2 other Ukrainians who last month, after being accused of helping Russia sabotage a strategic rail line, fled to Belarus, prompting Poland to issue an Interpol red notice. Polish Internal Affairs Minister Marcin Kierwiński confirmed today the 2 men, Yevgeny Ivanov and Alexander Kononov, did indeed have criminal records in Ukraine.
Similar arrests concerning acts of sabotage have been happening almost daily for the past 2 weeks. The goal is to detain all those involved in any way in diversions in Poland.
The minister is urging Kiev to improve data sharing on convicted offenders.
In the case of this particular incident, we have identified a problem on the Ukrainian side, and this is why we have been telling our Ukrainian partners that this kind of issue can't happen again.
Meanwhile, a preliminary hearing was held today in the regional court in Sosnowiec for 2 Russians suspecting of spying for Russia. Igor R. and his wife Irina R. are being charged in a case involving a series of packages, possibly involving a bomb.
The gist of it is that the matter ultimately touches upon state defence. Besides that, there is another significant factor here. There are other suspects involved in these proceedings. Those who haven't been caught yet could use public information about the case for their own legal advantage.
NATO seems to be taking all this seriously, and there's a growing understanding that Poland is one of the hardest hit countries in Europe by the Russian hybrid attack campaign.
We saw the UAS events and spilling over into Poland recently. We've seen the sabotage on the Polish railway. All of those things are part of this hybrid network of activity. Some of it reckless, some of it intentional, but it doesn't really matter to me. It's something that we have to be able to respond to.
These saboteurs are also using unregulated cryptocurrency to finance their acts.
Most European countries, if I'm not mistaken, all of them except Poland, have introduced such regulation, which provided a sense of security. Poland has not.
Polish Minister of Digital Affairs Krzysztof Gawkowski is now pushing the Polish government for better crypto regulation. For TVP World, Randy Potts.
Cyprian Ciucu was chosen to be the next mayor of Bucharest after defeating far-right candidate Anca Alexandrescu in Sunday's local election. Ciucu is a member of Romania's Liberal Party and will take over from Nicu Șordan, who was elected the country's president earlier this year. Paweł Trzaskowski reports.
With more than 36% of the votes, Cyprian Ciucu of National Liberal Party will be the next mayor of Bucharest.
This vote makes me responsible. I want to very much thank all of the citizens of Bucharest for putting their trust in me, and I thank all of my colleagues who supported me throughout this campaign.
Sunday's election was a highly contested battle between Ciucu and Anca Alexandrescu, a former journalist backed by the party currently enjoying the most support in Romania, the hard-right Alliance for the Union of Romanians. In the end, Alexandrescu lost by 14 percentage points.
It's a complicated moment for our country. I am sorry that so few citizens cast their ballots.
Turnout did not exceed 32%, a potential sign that Romanians are growing weary of election marathon that started last year after the first round of presidential election was annulled by the Constitutional Court. This political saga eventually ended with then-mayor of Bucharest, Nicu Șordan, winning the election rerun, thus vacating the post and taking up the position of President of Romania. A fragile ruling coalition formed, led by Prime Minister Ilie Bolojan. It is believed that soon-to-be Mayor Ciucu, who is Bolojan's close ally, will bolster the government, tasked with curbing Romania's excessive budget deficit. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
Now let's move to Brussels, but not to talk about European politics, but to enjoy the Christmas decorations that adorn the streets of the Belgian capital with lavish chocolate Christmas displays on every street corner. And now time to revisit one of our top stories. Is Ukraine ready to agree to peace, which it could be offered? What better person to speak about how Ukrainians are approaching the discussions revolving around the peace plan and what's next for the country than Serhiy Prytula, founder of the Serhiy Prytula Charity Foundation. Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back in the studio.
Thank you.
So, as peace negotiations continue, Ukraine undergoes constant attacks. We see that every night, day in and day out. Power shortages, human loss. How long do you think Ukraine and the Ukrainian society can hold on living within the war reality before it makes a decision about whether or not to agree to the peace that it is presented?
Exactly, peace. Look, we are staying strong previous 4 years, and Russia tried to destroy our critical infrastructure, to destroy our unity inside Ukrainian society, but we're still strong. And of course, we're bleeding every day and we suffered, but we understand that this is not just Putin's war, like some people on some our West allies call it. That's the war not for some territories that Russia want to take. They have a lot of territories. They are the biggest country in the world. That's just a war where we have only two choices. One, to save our state, our independence, and another one to disappear, or to be a part of a Russian world. That's the same, that like to disappear as a nation, Ukrainian. So that's why everything very tough, everything complicated, but I think that Ukrainians will never give up, and we will fight anyway. And we are very happy that our European allies, they still stay strong in the case of supporting of Ukraine. Because of course we all are a little bit disappointed because of some policies and some messages from Capitol, from United States, and we feel this disappointment because our allies, they push on the wrong side.
What do you mean?
I mean that it's really very easy to push on the Ukrainian president and the government to do something more in the case of negotiations with Russians. But no one from Ukrainian side will not put the signature under some statements, under some points where we have no justice, for example. So we talk about justice, peace. And if Russia said that that you need to forget about all the war crimes and no investigations about the war crimes that Russia made in Ukraine, so no one agree with that in Ukraine, and no one want to let to just make a gift in the case of some territories of Donbas or some other regions of Ukraine.
So with how the deal is playing out as of now, we started with 28 points that were drafted. We know that there were some changes being introduced. We know that 2 points in the actual plan are a bone of contention, so to speak. Would you consider this to be a peace deal or a capitulation for Ukraine?
It's a hard question because I'm not a person that involved to negotiations. So I'm not in the process, and I really don't know exactly some things that only a few persons from Ukrainian side know and few persons from US side know. But I understand only one thing, that nobody in Ukraine cannot imagine that we can capitulate, and that's why our president, I hope, will fight around every point. Doesn't matter, 28, 19, 10 or 5. But it's about the dignity of a nation, it's about the dignity of the state, and it's about the surviving of all Ukrainians. So my own opinion is we don't care about the number of points that we need to discuss with...
It's about the substance.
It's about that we all understand that only one power that we have can stop Russians or can have some new messages to negotiations, that's Ukrainian armed forces. Because it doesn't matter which way we'll speak our partners and allies with Russians. But we saw it in the previous 4 years and many years before that any deals that we sign with Russians, it's not work. Any memorandums that we sign with Russians, it's not work. They cancel everything that they can. Why? Because they feel the power.
So this wouldn't be peace. This would be time out for Russia to regroup. Is that what you're
and that's exactly what our closest neighbors need to think about it. That because it's really absolutely terrible thing. 1 week ago, Putin in Bishkek, he said that if Europe wants, we are ready to fight with Europe. We can launch the war. A few days after, Medvedev, absolutely drunk as usual, he wrote a statement that if European Union will take our Russian frozen assets, so we will come and take it by some things. So they don't joke, guys. They're really preparing themselves to fight with Europe. And that's why all opportunities that you have to support Ukrainian armed forces and Ukrainian society. So please use it, because we are defense shield not only for Poland, but for all other countries who cannot imagine all the terrible things that can happen if Russians will launch the new big war.
But from what you see, you're obviously involved in the help in the front line and certain weapons delivery, for example, drones. There is that technology. Based on your experience, do you think that Russia has enough potential and enough power to be able to attack NATO?
Yes, for sure. And exactly, that's not about they are so powerful. They are not so powerful like somebody can imagine, because they are fighting around Pokrovsk for 1 year and lost dozens, thousands of troops there. But guys, I have a bad news for you. EU armies, EU forces are really weak, and they have no any type of experience of a modern war. And they waste 3 years from a moment when Russia started full-scale invasion to the moment when J.D. Vance made his speech in Munich in February of this year. So the time between was wasted. Now everything changed in Europe, and we can see how everything moved in Germany, in France. We have a lot of different missions in Ukraine with military from Nordic countries, from West Europe, from Great Britain, United States, Poland, of course. But it takes time to get some experience from Ukraine, to train your people, to train not only your military, but also your civilians. Exactly. My foundation, we created and developed the biggest network in Ukraine of centers of civil awareness. Because if you have such a huge challenge like a war, so it doesn't mean that military fight, everybody else just
They're not sitting on the sidelines. They're being directly affected by everything that's happening. That's why it's important for civilians to also have that awareness.
Yes, exactly. And some trouble that we have in Ukraine, we can find solutions. And exactly my mission now in Warsaw, I'm visiting Warsaw this day because I have a lot of meetings with some businesses and some communities to raise money for Shahed interceptors. So we have technologies how to shut down Shahids. They are very dangerous drones, and they can destroy some buildings or critical infrastructure, and they kill people in Ukraine. And one day, a few months ago, 20 Shahids, they visited Poland, as I remember. And that's my message to all our supporters here in Poland. If you don't want to have guests like Russian drones in Polish sky, so please donate for our initiatives in Ukraine to shut down Russian drones in Ukrainian sky.
Let's shift gears because our time, unfortunately, here on the program is coming to an end. When it comes to President Zelenskyy, he's been the head person when it comes to providing backup for his country and standing as a person, a representative to Ukraine on the international arena. When it comes to the president, would you say that he still has the support of the people? How is that looking in Ukraine from your perspective? And do you think that there are going to be elections held soon? And if so, when?
We need to separate some things. First of all, I need to say that, of course, a big number of Ukrainians, a big percent of our society, is very disappointed because of different corruption scandals in Ukraine. It's absolutely horrific during the war, such terrible things. But if you talk about foreign affairs, and our president is the person who have contacts with all allies and partners, so we all support him because he's commander-in-chief and our president. Nobody blamed him because of some negotiations that maybe we don't expect some good results from them, because we understand that we have business with Russians, exactly, and that's like to have negotiations with with, I don't know, with death, for example. And we have no any trouble with the legitimation of Zelenskyy after his first presidential term was finished, because more than half percent of, more than 50%, I think about 65% of Ukrainians support him as a president of Ukraine during the war. After the war, when we will have some elections, I don't know, maybe
So
people...
there is an unwavering support in Ukraine as of now for President Zelenskyy?
Pardon?
An unwavering support for President Zelenskyy in Ukraine right now?
We have, of course, some part of people who try to explain to Mr. Zelenskyy that his time is finished and he needs to go away. But who will provide the negotiations? We cannot have elections during the war.
Exactly.
So that's why, as we have a parliament to the end of the war, and our president will stay on his mission to the end of the war. Our business, like citizens of Ukraine and supporters around our country, so just to support Ukrainian armed forces and to hope that that negotiations will be success from all sides.
Thank you very much. Serhiy Prytula, founder of Serhiy Prytula Charity Foundation. Thank you for joining me for World News Tonight. And so this would be all for now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Claudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World in just a moment for more news and features. Good night.